I was sitting in my kitchen on a quiet Saturday morning, drinking my second cup of coffee and watching my 8-year-old daughter Emma practice her violin scales for her upcoming recital. The sunlight streamed through our window, casting warm golden rays across her focused face as she concentrated on hitting each note perfectly. Her tongue stuck out slightly in concentration, the same way it did when she worked on her art projects, or helped me with weekend chores around the house. This peaceful moment represented everything I loved about our weekend mornings together, just the two of us before Sarah woke up for her well-deserved sleep-in after a long week at work. My phone buzzed against the wooden table, displaying a Facebook notification that my sister Jessica had tagged me in a post. The instant I saw it, my stomach dropped like a stone. There was the photo from last weekend's family barbecue showing Emma and me laughing together on the back porch swing, her small hand in mine as we shared a private joke about her Uncle Frank's terrible grilling skills. But Jessica's caption made my blood turn to ice water. When mistakes raise mistakes? Within just 2 hours, my entire extended family had descended like hungry vultures circling roadkill. Aunt Martha, Uncle Frank cousins Brandon and Danny, even my own mother Dorothy, were all there in the comments section, liking every single cruel remark and adding their own twisted jokes about my teenage pregnancy situation, calling my beautiful, intelligent daughter living proof of my poor life choices and moral failures. The comments section transformed into a feeding frenzy of cruelty that made my chest tighten with each painful refresh of the screen. Uncle Frank, who had taught me to ride my first bicycle and whom I had always respected during my childhood years, wrote, "Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it, Paul?" accompanied by 3 crying, laughing emojis and a fire symbol. My cousin Brandon, who used to be my closest friend during family gatherings, chimed in with devastating words. At least he's consistent with making bad decisions throughout his entire life, followed by a string of fire emojis and skull symbols that felt like daggers piercing my heart. Aunt Martha, the woman who used to babysit me when I was little and read me bedtime stories about brave knights and magical kingdoms, shared the entire post to her personal timeline with her own commentary that cut deep. Some people never learn from their mistakes and just keep making them over and over again. The betrayal felt overwhelming as I watched people who had supposedly loved me throughout my childhood tear apart my daughter's very existence for public entertainment. The worst part of this digital lynching was seeing my mother Dorothy's profile picture among the likes giving her silent approval to this public execution of her granddaughter's dignity. Her complicity felt like a physical blow to my solar plexus, stealing my breath and making my hands shake with a combination of rage and disbelief that my own mother could participate in something so cruel. My phone rang within minutes, the familiar ringtone that I had assigned to my mother's number. But she wasn't calling to defend Emma or me from this coordinated attack. Instead, her voice carried that familiar tone of disappointment that I had grown up hearing whenever I failed to meet her expectations or made choices she couldn't understand or approve of. "Paul, honey, you really shouldn't be surprised by this kind of reaction," she said, as if I had somehow invited this vicious attack on my innocent daughter. "Maybe you can use this as a teaching moment about consequences and responsibility. Emma needs to understand how the world works eventually." I felt my jaw clench painfully as I reminded her for what felt like the 100th time over the years about the real story behind Emma's birth and the tragic circumstances that had shaped our lives. "Mom, you know perfectly well that Emma was conceived during my relationship with Lisa during our senior year of high school. You know that Lisa died in that horrible car accident when Emma was only 2 years old, leaving me as a single father. This isn't some random teenage mistake we're discussing here. This is my daughter, your granddaughter, who lost her birth mother in a tragedy and deserves infinitely better than being treated like a shameful burden by her own extended family." The uncomfortable silence on the other end of the line stretched for what felt like an eternity before Mom sighed heavily, as if my reasonable explanation was somehow tiresome. Well, Paul, you have to understand that people naturally have strong opinions about these complicated situations. Emma is certainly a sweet child when she wants to be, but the circumstances surrounding her birth were undeniably complicated and problematic. I hung up the phone with trembling hands, my entire body shaking with rage and complete disbelief. These people knew the heartbreaking backstory intimately. They knew I had stepped up as a 17-year-old kid when Lisa became pregnant, taking responsibility without hesitation. They knew I had worked 3 demanding jobs simultaneously to support us both financially. They knew I had held Lisa's hand in the hospital intensive care unit when she died from her catastrophic injuries, promising her with tears streaming down my face that I would give Emma the absolute best life possible. Yet here they were treating my beloved daughter like she was concrete evidence of some moral failing instead of recognizing her as the incredible, intelligent, artistic little girl she had always been. Emma, who made honor roll every semester, who volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend, who played violin beautifully and created artwork that covered our refrigerator and home office walls. The phone rang again, and this time caller ID showed Jessica's name. I could hear background laughter and multiple voices as she spoke, which made my stomach turn even more violently. "Oh, come on, Paul, don't be so dramatic about everything," she said, her voice light and dismissive as if discussing weekend weather. "It was just a harmless family joke. You're being way too sensitive about this whole situation." A harmless joke. I couldn't keep the fury out of my voice as I struggled to process her casual cruelty. "Jessica, you publicly humiliated an 8-year-old child on social media. How exactly is that funny to you or anyone else?" She laughed again, and I heard other family voices joining in with their amusement at my distress. "Look, it's really not that serious or important. Everyone knows you love Emma deeply. We're just having a little fun with ancient family history that everyone already knows about anyway." But then Jessica said something that made my blood turn to absolute ice, revealing the calculated nature of her attack. "Besides, Danny, bet me $20 that I wouldn't have the courage to roast you publicly at the next family gathering. I figured Facebook counted as public enough, and honestly, I could really use the money right now with all my bills." I stared at my phone in complete disbelief and horror. My sister had just casually admitted that she had publicly humiliated my precious daughter for $20 in cash. The sheer cruelty and callousness of using my child as a punchline in a betting game hit me like a physical assault. This wasn't some thoughtless moment of poor judgment or a misguided attempt at family humor. This was calculated, intentional meanness for pocket change, using Emma's existence as entertainment currency. Hours crawled by with agonizing slowness, and I found myself compulsively checking my phone, waiting desperately for one specific response that never materialized. Sarah, my wife of 2 years, who had legally adopted Emma and transformed into the most amazing mother figure my daughter could have possibly hoped for, hadn't responded to Jessica's post at all. Her silence felt deafening and ominous in stark contrast to the thunderous chorus of family cruelty echoing through my smartphone notifications. Sarah's lack of response worried me more than I wanted to admit. She had always been the voice of calm reason during my family's occasional dramatic episodes, the steady presence who helped me navigate the complicated dynamics that had always existed within my extended relatives. But this silence felt different, heavier, loaded with implications I couldn't quite decipher. I discovered Sarah in our master bedroom, sitting cross-legged on our comfortable king-size bed, with her laptop computer open typing with an intensity and focus I rarely witnessed. Her usually serene demeanor had been replaced by a fierce concentration that made her jaw set in determination as her fingers flew across the keyboard with purposeful speed. When she noticed me standing uncertainly in the doorway, She looked up with eyes that blazed with protective fury I had never seen before. "I've been systematically documenting everything that happened today," she said firmly, turning the laptop screen toward me so I could see her meticulous work. I saw she had taken detailed screenshots of every single cruel comment, organizing them methodically in computer folders with precise timestamps and clearly visible names. But that comprehensive documentation wasn't the extent of her preparation. She had additional files open simultaneously, showing printed email conversations and text message exchanges that I had never seen before. "Sarah, what exactly is all this material?" I asked, settling beside her on the bed as confusion washed over me. She gestured for me to sit closer as she opened another folder containing months of research. "I've been researching cyberbullying laws extensively for the past 6 months, Paul. I had a growing suspicion that your family would eventually cross a serious line exactly like this, and I wanted to be completely prepared with legal documentation when it inevitably happened." My confusion must have been obvious on my face, because she continued with patient explanation. "Your family has been conducting private conversations about Emma behind our backs for many months. You need to see this evidence." She showed me a printed group text conversation between Jessica, Aunt Martha, and my mother from Emma's 8th birthday party celebration last month. Jessica had written with casual cruelty, "Do we really have to keep pretending to care enthusiastically about that particular kid? It's becoming exhausting, putting on this elaborate happy family performance every single time." Aunt Martha had responded with equal callousness, "She's pleasant enough on the surface, but she's ultimately just a permanent reminder of Paul's biggest life mistake. At least Sarah seems capable of handling her reasonably well most of the time." My mother's response made my stomach plummet toward the floor. "Emma tries desperately hard to fit in with everyone, but she'll always be fundamentally different from the other children. She doesn't have a real biological mother, and that absence shows clearly in her behavior patterns and social interactions." I stared at these private messages in complete shock, feeling like someone had delivered a devastating punch directly to my solar plexus. "How did you manage to obtain these private communications?" Sarah's expression remained grimly serious as she explained. "Your cousin Danny's wife Rachel forwarded them to me confidentially. She's been increasingly uncomfortable with how your family discusses Emma behind your back. But she didn't know the appropriate way to tell you about their conversations. Unfortunately, there's significantly more evidence to review." She opened another file revealing a group chat that I had apparently never been included in despite it being labeled Family Updates and News. The conversations revealed a systematic, deliberate pattern of exclusion and casual cruelty toward Emma that had been developing consistently for over a year. Uncle Frank had written with disturbing analysis, "Anyone else think that particular child is excessively clingy with Sarah? It's like she's desperately searching for a mother figure and doesn't understand appropriate boundaries." Brandon had replied with amateur psychology, "She's probably going to develop serious attachment issues as she grows older. Children from situations like that usually do eventually." Jessica had added her own poisonous contribution. "Maybe we should consider staging some kind of family intervention. Paul and Sarah might not realize how Emma's neediness and desperation could potentially affect their marriage long term." Reading these messages made me feel physically nauseated. These people had been systematically analyzing and criticizing my daughter's every social interaction, treating her natural healthy bond with Sarah as some kind of psychological disorder rather than recognizing it as the beautiful relationship it actually represented. But Sarah wasn't finished with her revelations. "Paul, there's something extremely important I need to tell you right now." Her voice softened considerably, and she took my trembling hand in hers. "I'm pregnant with our second child." The unexpected words hit me like a bolt of lightning from a clear sky. Pure joy and absolute terror flooded through my entire body simultaneously as I struggled to process what she had just revealed. "Sarah, that's absolutely incredible news. But why didn't you tell me about this sooner?" She looked down at our joined hands with evident worry. Because I'm genuinely terrified about how your family will treat this new baby compared to how they've consistently treated Emma over the past 2 years. I've been carefully watching them during family gatherings, observing how they barely acknowledge Emma's existence while simultaneously fawning over your cousin's children with obvious favoritism. I've been planning to completely cut contact with them, but I wanted you to witness their true nature for yourself first. The profound weight of her words settled over me like a suffocating heavy blanket. My wife had been carrying this secret, this deep fear, while watching my family slowly poison our lives with their casual, systematic cruelty. She had been building comprehensive evidence and preparing for this confrontation, while I remained completely blind to the true depth of their calculated toxicity. I documented everything methodically because I knew with certainty that they would eventually do something this public and this deliberately cruel, she continued with quiet determination. I wanted to be completely ready to protect our family when that inevitable moment finally arrived. Emma deserves infinitely better treatment than this, and our new baby deserves better too. Sarah's comprehensive investigation revealed disturbing behavioral patterns that penetrated far deeper than I had ever imagined possible. As she methodically walked me through her meticulously organized digital files, each new revelation felt like another layer of betrayal being systematically peeled away from my understanding of my family. She had been silently gathering irrefutable evidence for months, watching my family's behavior with the trained eye of someone who recognized emotional abuse and psychological manipulation. Examine this conversation from 3 weeks ago, she said, opening another damning screenshot. It displayed a private message thread between Jessica and our mother discussing Emma's upcoming school art show, where she was scheduled to display her watercolor paintings. Jessica had written with casual dismissiveness, "Are we actually expected to attend this particular event?" I mean, it's nice that Paul encourages her various hobbies, but we don't attend every cousin's random school events and activities. My mother had replied with cold calculation. I suppose we should make a brief appearance for appearances, though between you and me, Emma receives far too much attention and praise for being completely average. Paul acts like absolutely everything she accomplishes is brilliant and groundbreaking. Jessica had responded with vicious clarity. Exactly right. Like, we understand that you love your child, but she's not actually special or talented. She's just a permanent reminder that Paul couldn't control himself as a teenager. I felt my hands curl into tight fists as I absorbed their casual dismissal of Emma's genuine talents and hard-earned achievements. Emma had won second place in that competitive art show for a beautiful, sophisticated watercolor painting depicting our family gathered around our kitchen table. She had been so proud, so excited to share her accomplishment with everyone who mattered to her. She had practiced for weeks, carefully mixing colors and perfecting techniques. And my family had attended grudgingly, treating her significant accomplishment like a tedious inconvenience they had to endure. Sarah continued scrolling through her evidence, revealing more systematic cruelty. This message thread is from last month's annual family picnic, she said, pointing to another conversation that made my blood boil. Aunt Martha had written to the extended family group with calculated manipulation, just providing everyone a heads up. Emma has been asking the other children why she doesn't get invited to sleepovers and cousin activities. Maybe we should occasionally include her sometimes to avoid creating unnecessary drama and conflict. Uncle Frank had replied with shocking honesty, "It's genuinely awkward because she's not really our blood family member." The other children naturally noticed the difference in treatment. Brandon had added his own psychological assessment. Plus, she asks far too many questions about her birth mother. It makes everyone feel uncomfortable and awkward. My cousin Danny had contributed his amateur diagnosis. Maybe Paul should seriously consider getting her professional therapy. She seems to have significant attachment issues and identity problems that need addressing. The systematic cruelty was calculated and deliberate. They weren't simply excluding Emma from family activities. They were carefully analyzing her natural reactions to that exclusion and pathologizing her normal responses. When she noticed being consistently left out, they labeled her as problematic instead of examining their own deliberately hurtful behavior. "There's significantly more evidence," Sarah said, her voice heavy with accumulated anger. She opened an audio file on her smartphone. "Jessica accidentally sent this voice message to me instead of your mother during last weekend's barbecue. I think she intended to send it in their private chat." She pressed play, and Jessica's voice filled our quiet bedroom. In the background, I could hear the familiar sounds of our family gathering, the laughter and conversation that had seemed so normal and pleasant at the time. "Mom, I really hope this Facebook post strategy works effectively," Jessica was saying with calculated intent. "Maybe it will finally make Paul realize that Emma isn't really family in the same way the other children are. Sarah deserves a genuine chance to have a real family without all this complicated baggage from Paul's troubled past. Emma's pleasant enough, but she's always going to be a permanent reminder of his mistakes, and that's not fair to Sarah or any future children they might have." The recording continued with increasing viciousness. "I mean, look at how desperately clingy Emma is with Sarah. It's like she knows instinctively that she doesn't really belong and she's trying too hard to fit in. It's actually kind of pathetic. But maybe it's better if Paul faces reality about the situation." I stared at the phone in complete shock, my sister's voice, continuing to spill pure poison into our peaceful bedroom. She was discussing my daughter like Emma was some kind of inconvenient package deal, a troublesome burden that Sarah had to tolerate, rather than the amazing child she had chosen to adopt and love unconditionally. "Jessica thinks she's protecting me," Sarah said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "She thinks Emma is baggage that I'm stuck with because I fell in love with you. She has absolutely no idea that adopting Emma was the easiest decision I ever made, that being her mother is one of the greatest privileges of my entire life." The final portion of Jessica's recording was the most devastating. "I just want Paul to be happy, and I think he'd be significantly happier if he didn't have to deal with all the complications that come with Emma. Sarah could give him a fresh start with a normal family." Sarah stopped the recording and looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "This is what they really think, Paul. They see Emma as an obstacle to our happiness rather than the foundation of it. They think I'm settling for damaged goods instead of recognizing that you and Emma are the best things that ever happened to me." The next discovery completely shattered what remained of my faith in my family's capacity for basic human decency. Sarah had noticed Emma acting increasingly withdrawn and melancholy lately, and her motherly instincts had prompted her to gently investigate the source of this troubling change in behavior. What she discovered broke both our hearts completely and irrevocably. Emma left her diary open on her desk yesterday afternoon. Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't deliberately snooping, but I saw our names written there and became worried. Paul, you absolutely need to see what she's been writing about her experiences." She handed me a purple notebook covered in Emma's careful 8-year-old handwriting, decorated with stickers and small drawings that made it uniquely hers. The entries dated back several months, documenting experiences and observations that I had been completely blind to. My hands shook uncontrollably as I read my daughter's private thoughts about family interactions I had assumed were normal and healthy. The entry from 2 months ago made my heart ache. Grandma Dorothy hugged Brandon and Danny at the barbecue for a really long time and told them how much she missed them. She just patted my head quickly and told me to go help Dad with carrying the plates. I don't think she missed me, even though I haven't seen her in 3 weeks. The other grandchildren get long hugs and I get quick pats. Another entry from Emma's birthday party revealed devastating awareness. Aunt Martha told cousin Sarah that my Father's Day card for Dad was trying too hard and that I don't need to work so hard to prove I belong. I don't know what that means, but it made my stomach hurt really bad. I worked really hard on that card because I love Dad so much. The entry from last month's cousin sleepover made my chest tight with rage. All the girl cousins had a sleepover at Jessica's house, but I wasn't invited to join them. When I asked Mom Sarah if I did something wrong, she said sometimes people make thoughtless choices. But I heard Jessica tell Mom Dorothy on the phone that it would be weird to include me because I'm not really family like the other children. I pretended I didn't hear, but I did. Page after page revealed Emma's careful documentation of exclusion, confusion, and deep hurt. She had been systematically cataloging every slight, every dismissive comment, every moment when she was treated differently from her cousins. But what broke my heart most completely was how she internalized all the blame for their cruelty. I think maybe I make people uncomfortable because I don't have a real mom like the other kids. One entry read, with heartbreaking clarity, "The other children have moms and dads who are married to each other, and I just have Dad and Mom Sarah who chose me later. Maybe that's why I don't fit in right with everyone else." Another entry showed her practicing conversations in preparation. "I've been practicing calling Mom Sarah just Mom, but I'm scared. It will make Grandma Dorothy and Aunt Martha angry. They already don't like that she adopted me legally. Jessica said adoption papers don't make you real family. They just make things legal on paper." The most devastating entry was from just 1 week ago. I heard Uncle Frank tell someone at the grocery store that Dad has his hands full with that girl, and that I probably have issues because of my situation. I looked up issues on Mom Sarah's computer, and it means problems that need to be fixed. I don't want to be Dad's problem to fix. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes as I continued reading through our daughter's private pain. Paul, she's been pretending to be sick during family gatherings because she can tell she makes everyone uncomfortable. She's been protecting herself the only way an 8-year-old knows how. But the final entries revealed something that made my heart stop beating completely. Emma had been planning to sacrifice herself for what she believed was our happiness and well-being. "Mom Sarah is going to have a baby soon," she had written with innocent observation. "I can tell because she's been reading baby books and eating crackers in the morning like on TV shows. I think maybe I should ask if I can go live with Mom Sarah's parents so the new baby can have a normal family without me complicating things. Everyone says I'm complicated because I don't have my first mom anymore." The last entry was dated just 2 days ago. "I love Dad and Mom Sarah so much, but maybe they would be happier with just the new baby. Real families don't have kids like me who make everyone feel weird and uncomfortable. I'm going to be really good and helpful until Mom Sarah has the baby, and then I'll ask to move somewhere else so they can be normal and happy." Sarah and I both broke down crying as we read our daughter's plan to remove herself from our lives for the sake of our happiness. This brilliant, sensitive child had been watching the adults in her life treat her like a burden, and had concluded that the solution was to disappear from our family entirely. At that exact moment, Emma appeared in our bedroom doorway, her face pale and frightened. In her small hand was her school tablet, and I could see Facebook open on the screen. My heart sank as I realized what had happened. "Dad," she said in a small voice that broke my heart completely. "My friend Madison showed me Aunt Jessica's picture at school today. She asked me if I really was a mistake like Jessica said in the caption." Emma's lower lip trembled as she continued. "Madison said all the grown-ups in the comments were being really mean about me. She wanted to know if you're embarrassed to be my dad." She walked slowly toward our bed, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Am I really a mistake, Dad? Would you and Mom Sarah be happier if I wasn't here anymore? I know Mom Sarah is having a real baby soon, and maybe there won't be room for a mistake like me in our family." The words hit me like physical blows to my chest. My brilliant, loving daughter was asking if she was wanted, if she belonged, if her existence was something to be ashamed of. She had been carrying this pain for months while I remained completely oblivious to her suffering. "I've been thinking really hard," Emma continued, her voice barely audible. Maybe I could go live with Grandma Helen or Mom Sarah's parents. Then you could have a normal family with just the new baby, and no one would have to pretend to like me at family parties anymore. Sarah's response to Jessica's calculated cruelty was swift, strategic, and absolutely devastating in its precision. She had spent months preparing for exactly this moment, and when Emma stood in our bedroom, asking if she was a mistake, Sarah's protective maternal instincts took over completely. She kissed Emma's forehead tenderly, assured her that she was the most wanted and loved child in the entire world, and then sat down to craft the most powerful counterattack I had ever witnessed. Paul, take Emma to get ice cream at her favorite shop. Sarah said, her voice calm, but her eyes blazing with determination. I need to handle this situation properly, and I want Emma away from the computer when I execute my response. When we returned an hour later, after Emma had enjoyed a double scoop of strawberry ice cream and temporarily forgotten about the morning's trauma, Sarah's post was live on Facebook, and the response was already building momentum. She had used the exact same photograph Jessica had posted, but her caption told a completely different story that honored the truth of our lives. Sarah wrote with powerful clarity, "This is my husband Paul and our daughter Emma." When Paul was 17 years old, he took full responsibility when his girlfriend became pregnant. When she died tragically in a car accident 2 years later, he raised Emma alone while finishing high school and working 3 demanding jobs simultaneously. He put himself through community college while being a dedicated single father. Emma is a straight A student, a talented artist, and volunteers at the animal shelter every weekend. Sarah had included a comprehensive photo collage showing Emma's report cards with perfect attendance, her art show ribbon pictures of her reading to shelter puppies, and screenshots of her teachers' glowing comments about her character and academic performance. She continued with passionate conviction, "Paul is the most devoted father I've ever known, and Emma is the most incredible daughter I could have asked for." When I married Paul, adopting Emma wasn't a compromise or a burden I had to accept. It was a privilege and an honor I was grateful to receive. She didn't come with Paul as baggage or complications. She came as a gift and a blessing. But Sarah wasn't finished with her defense. She tagged every single family member who had commented negatively on Jessica's post and issued a direct challenge that cut through their excuses. To those family members who liked and commented on Jessica's cruel post, I want you to explain to me how bullying an 8-year-old child aligns with your stated values. I want you to tell me why you think it's acceptable to call Emma a mistake when she's accomplished more in her 8 years than most adults accomplish in decades. I want you to justify treating this brilliant, kind, loving child like she's something to be ashamed of instead of someone to be celebrated and proud of. Sarah had included additional screenshots of Emma's achievements alongside photographs of our happiest family moments. Emma teaching her younger cousins to paint watercolors at family gatherings. Emma helping elderly neighbors carry heavy groceries to their front doors. Emma winning the school spelling bee with a radiant smile. Emma and me reading together every single night before bedtime, a tradition we had maintained since she was 2 years old. The post concluded with a paragraph that brought tears to my eyes. Emma Rose Thompson is not a mistake. She's a miracle. She's proof that love creates family, that strength comes from facing challenges together, and that character is built through overcoming adversity. If you can't see the incredible human being she is, the problem isn't with Emma's worth or value. The problem is with your heart and your capacity for love. Within minutes of Sarah's post going live, something extraordinary and unexpected happened. The first comment came from a name I hadn't seen in years. Helen Thompson, my estranged grandmother, who had been absent from our family gatherings for the past 5 years due to ongoing drama and conflicts with my mother's side of the family. I have been quietly following Paul's life from a respectful distance, Grandmother Helen wrote with authority. and I am disgusted by how my children and grandchildren have treated this remarkable young man and his beautiful daughter. Paul, you have shown more strength, character, and integrity than the rest of this family combined. Emma, you are a Thompson through and through, and I am proud to call you my great-granddaughter. But Helen wasn't finished with her intervention. She added a comment that sent immediate shockwaves through the entire family. To my children and grandchildren who participated in this cruelty, you have 48 hours to publicly apologize to Paul and Emma, or you will find yourselves removed from my will entirely. I will not leave my life's work to people who lack basic human decency and compassion. The response was immediate and chaotic. Within minutes, Helen had shared Sarah's post to her own timeline with additional commentary that cut through my family like a sword. This is what real family looks like. A father who sacrifices everything for his child. A daughter who brings light to everyone around her. A mother who chooses love over biology. If you can't recognize the beauty in this family, you don't deserve to be part of it. Helen's post reached hundreds of her friends, many of whom were longtime community members who had watched me grow up in our small town. They began sharing their own memories of my teenage years, how impressed they had been with my dedication to Emma, how proud they were of the man I had become despite facing challenges that would have broken others. Teachers from my high school commented about my work ethic and determination. Employers from my various jobs shared stories about my reliability and character. Community members recalled watching me push Emma's stroller to work, seeing me study at the library while she played quietly beside me, witnessing the deep bond between father and daughter that had developed through adversity. The contrast between Helen's pride and my immediate family's cruelty became stark and undeniable. Here was my grandmother, who I barely saw anymore due to complicated family politics, publicly defending me, while my mother's sister and extended family had just spent hours mocking my daughter for entertainment. My phone began ringing immediately. First Jessica, then my mother, then various aunts and uncles, all panicking about Helen's ultimatum. But I didn't answer any of their calls. I was too busy reading the comments pouring in from Helen's friends and community members, people who saw Emma for who she really was, rather than through the distorted lens of family gossip and judgment. Grandmother Helen's intervention triggered exactly the kind of panic Sarah had predicted, but it also revealed the true nature of my family's character in ways I hadn't expected or prepared for. Within hours of Helen's public ultimatum, my phone was flooded with frantic calls from relatives who had spent years treating Emma and me like inconvenient outsiders. But their responses weren't uniform, and the divisions that emerged showed me who these people really were beneath their social facades and family loyalty claims. My mother was the first to call, her voice shaking with a combination of panic and righteous indignation. "Paul, you need to fix this situation with your grandmother immediately," she demanded, as if I had somehow orchestrated Helen's response or controlled her decision-making. She's threatening to change her will over some silly Facebook drama? This is completely ridiculous and inappropriate. Silly Facebook drama. I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice as I processed her dismissive characterization. "Mom, your daughter publicly called my child a mistake, and you liked the post. This isn't drama. This is systematic cruelty toward an innocent child." "Well, you're being overly sensitive about everything," she snapped back defensively. Family teasing has always been part of how we interact with each other. Emma needs to learn that the world isn't going to coddle her forever. The call ended badly with my mother hanging up abruptly after I refused to contact Helen on her behalf or apologize for defending my daughter. But the desperate calls kept coming throughout the day. Uncle Frank tried a different approach, claiming he had been misunderstood and that his comment was meant to be supportive somehow. Aunt Martha sobbed dramatically into the phone about how she loved Emma like her own granddaughter and couldn't believe I would think otherwise. But the most revealing call came from my cousin Danny's wife, Rachel, who had been largely silent during the Facebook incident. She called to apologize sincerely for her husband's participation and to share something that made my blood run cold with realization. Paul, I need to tell you something that's been bothering me for months. Rachel said, her voice heavy with guilt and concern. Danny and some of the others have been planning what they call an intervention for you and Sarah. They want to convince you that Emma needs professional help because she's too attached to Sarah, and it's going to cause problems when you have other children. She continued with devastating details. They've been discussing it in their group chat for weeks. They think Emma is psychologically damaged because of losing her birth mother, and they want to pressure you into sending her to therapy to fix her attachment issues before she ruins your marriage. The audacity was absolutely breathtaking. My family had been planning to gaslight me into believing my daughter had psychological problems because she loved her adoptive mother deeply. They were going to use their collective authority as concerned relatives to convince me that Emma's healthy, loving relationship with Sarah was somehow pathological and dangerous. There's more you need to know, Rachel continued reluctantly. Jessica has been telling people that Sarah only married you out of pity, and that she's probably planning to leave once she realizes how complicated it is to be a stepmother to a traumatized child. She's been saying that Emma will eventually act out because kids like that always do eventually. As Rachel spoke, I realized the depth of the psychological warfare my family had been waging against my daughter. They weren't just excluding her from activities or making cruel comments. They were systematically undermining her relationships, pathologizing her normal responses to their mistreatment, and preparing to gaslight Sarah and me into believing their abuse was actually Emma's problem. But while these revelations were devastating, Helen's public support had also unleashed something powerful and positive. Community members who had known our family for decades began sharing their own observations about the dynamics they had witnessed over the years. Several of my high school teachers commented on Sarah's post with stories about my character during those difficult teenage years when I was balancing fatherhood with education. Mrs. Rodriguez, my English teacher, wrote, "I watched Paul study for tests while Emma slept in her carrier beside his desk during after-school tutoring. I watched him work harder than any student I'd ever taught because he knew his daughter's future depended on his education. This young man has always been extraordinary." Neighbors wrote about watching Emma grow up and being consistently impressed by her kindness and maturity. Mr. Peterson from down the street shared, "Emma shovels my driveway every winter without being asked. She brings cookies she baked herself. She's the most thoughtful child I've ever known." Most importantly, other relatives began reaching out privately to express their disgust with how my immediate family had been behaving. My father's sister, Aunt Carol, who lived across the country and rarely attended family gatherings, sent a long message explaining that she had been horrified by what she witnessed during her last visit. "Paul, I saw how differently Emma was treated compared to the other children," she wrote. "I saw your mother barely acknowledge her while fawning over the other grandchildren. I saw Jessica and Martha exchanging looks when Emma tried to join conversations. I've been afraid to say anything because I live so far away, but after seeing what happened on Facebook, I can't stay silent anymore." But the real shock came when Helen called me directly. I hadn't spoken to my grandmother in over 2 years due to the ongoing family feuds that had divided our extended relatives into various camps and factions. Her voice was strong and clear, carrying the authority that had made her the family matriarch for decades. "Paul, I need you to know that I've been keeping track of your life even though we haven't spoken regularly," she said. "I have friends at Emma's school, friends who attend her art shows and violin recitals. I know about her volunteer work at the animal shelter. I know about her grades, her character, her kindness. I've been so proud of both of you and so ashamed of how my own children have treated you." Helen's revelation stunned me completely. She had been quietly following Emma's achievements and my progress as a father while remaining absent from family gatherings that had become increasingly toxic and painful. She revealed something that changed everything. Paul, I'm not just threatening to change my will. I've already done it. As of this morning, you and Emma are my primary beneficiaries. The family property, the vacation house, my investments, all of it will go to you because you represent the values I tried to instill in this family. The decision Sarah and I made that night was simultaneously the hardest and most liberating choice of our lives. After Emma fell asleep peacefully between us in our bed, exhausted from a day of emotional upheaval, but finally understanding that she was cherished rather than tolerated, we talked until dawn about what kind of family we wanted to build for our children and what values we wanted to instill in them. We can't keep exposing Emma to people who see her as damaged goods, Sarah said firmly, her hand resting protectively on her growing belly. And I absolutely refuse to have our new baby growing up thinking it's normal to treat family members as disposable based on their origins or circumstances. I knew she was absolutely right. The comprehensive documentation Sarah had gathered showed that my family's cruelty toward Emma was systematic, intentional, and escalating over time. Helen's intervention had forced them to scramble desperately for damage control, but their private messages revealed their true feelings unmistakably. Jessica's pathetic attempts to claim her account was hacked were transparent lies that fooled no one. My mother's sudden praise for Emma rang completely hollow after months of silent complicity in her mistreatment. The next morning, I wrote a public response on Facebook that would serve as our final word on the subject. I tagged every family member who had participated in the cruelty and made my position crystal clear for everyone to understand. To my family members who joined Jessica in mocking my daughter, I want you to understand exactly what you accomplished yesterday. You made an 8-year-old child ask me if she was a mistake. You made her believe that her existence was something to be ashamed of. You made her plan to remove herself from our family so that Sarah and I could be normal without her complicating our lives. I continued with passionate conviction. Emma is not a mistake. She is the best thing that ever happened to me. Being her father has taught me about unconditional love, about sacrifice, about the strength that comes from protecting those who depend on you completely. Sarah didn't marry me despite having Emma in my life. Sarah fell in love with both of us because we're a package deal, and that's exactly how it should be. The post went on to explain our decision with complete clarity, effective immediately. Sarah, Emma, and I are stepping back from family gatherings and events where Emma is not treated with the same love and respect as every other child. We will not attend functions where she is excluded, ignored, or made to feel lesser than her cousins. We will not expose our children to people who see them as burdens rather than blessings. But I also included a message of forgiveness that came from genuine healing. This doesn't come from anger, though I am angry about the pain you've caused. This comes from love for my children and a determination to protect them from toxicity, even when it comes from family. I forgive you for your cruelty, but forgiveness doesn't mean continued exposure to harm. The response was immediate and sharply divided. Several family members posted angry responses claiming I was overreacting dramatically and destroying the family over nothing important. Jessica wrote a long post about how I was poisoning Emma against her relatives and teaching her to be a victim instead of teaching resilience. My mother sent multiple text messages accusing me of choosing sides inappropriately and being manipulated by Sarah. But other relatives surprised me with their genuine support and understanding. Aunt Carol publicly shared my post and added her own commentary about witnessing the mistreatment during her visits. 3 of my cousins from my father's side reached out privately to apologize for their silence and to express their admiration for how I was protecting Emma. Even Rachel Danny's wife liked my post, despite the pressure she was likely facing at home. Most importantly, Helen invited us to her house for Sunday dinner, where she officially welcomed Sarah into the family and spent hours listening to Emma play violin and showing genuine interest in her artwork. For the first time in years, Emma experienced being the center of positive adult attention, being celebrated rather than tolerated or analyzed for problems. 6 months later, when our son Michael was born, Helen was in the delivery room, holding my hand, while my immediate family learned about his arrival through Facebook posts from other relatives. Emma held her baby brother for the first time and whispered to him about how lucky he was to have the best mom in the world. Sarah cried happy tears as Emma naturally transitioned to calling her mom in front of Helen, who beamed with pride at our unconventional but deeply loving family. The family property that Helen left to us in her will became a place where Emma could run freely, where she could invite friends for sleepovers without worrying about being excluded, where she could be celebrated for her talents rather than criticized for her origins. The toxic relatives who had mocked her gradually faded from our lives, replaced by chosen family members who saw our children as the gifts they truly were. Emma flourished in therapy not because she had the psychological problems my relatives claimed, but because she needed professional help processing the emotional abuse she had endured from people who should have protected her. Her therapist helped her understand that the problem was never with her worth or her place in our family. The problem was with adults who chose cruelty over kindness, judgment over acceptance. Today, Emma is a confident, accomplished teenager who knows her value isn't determined by other people's opinions or their acceptance. She speaks fluent French, has won multiple art competitions, and volunteers with foster children, helping them understand that families built on love are stronger than families built on obligation. Michael adores his big sister and has never questioned her place in our family because he's grown up seeing her treated as the treasure she's always been. The most profound lesson from this experience came from Emma herself during one of our evening talks after the family crisis had settled into our new normal. "Dad," she said, "I used to think I needed to earn love by being perfect. But real love isn't something you earn or deserve. It's something people choose to give because of who you are, not because of where you came from." Sarah and I learned that protecting our children from toxic people, even when those people share our DNA, was not only acceptable but absolutely necessary. Real family is built on respect, support, and unconditional love. Biology creates relatives, but choice creates family. I want to ask you something that I've been thinking about since this whole experience began. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to distance yourself from family members who couldn't accept or respect your choices or your children? How did you find the strength to put your children's well-being above family expectations and pressure? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, because I think many of us struggle with balancing family loyalty against protecting the people we love most. If this story resonated with you and your own experiences, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in dealing with difficult family dynamics. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about overcoming challenges and building stronger, healthier families. Thank you for listening to our journey, and I hope it reminds you that you have the power to choose who deserves access to your heart and your children's hearts. Take care of yourselves and each other, and remember that the family you create through love and choice is just as valid and important as the family you were born into.